Hi everyone, this is Steven. Welcome to my show, the show about US culture and Chinese culture and everything in between. What I want to talk about today is the most fundamental difference between US and China in terms of cultural value-wise. It drives a lot of behavioral change, it drives a lot of personal interaction difference, and just culturally overall. And it is the individualism in the US and the focus on group thinking, on building up a harmony within your group in China. And one can't help but wonder, why is it? So from the US side, let's start by looking at the history, right? How did the country started? It started from a revolutionary war with England. And once they win that war of independence, right, they become an independent country. Immediately what's next? If you think about it, and the country was a frontier, right? The government wasn't big enough to kind of govern the whole continent. So a lot of folks going explore like Midwest and later toward the West, kind of call it like Wild West, right? For the reason that the government are not out there to do anything for you. You are there to fight for your own life. Everything is on your own, and you're gonna do it by yourself. As a result, I think American people just have a lot of independence in their spirit because they're getting used to from previous ancestor and previous generation. They always rely on their own individualism to kind of fight against the nature, against wild animals, and I guess Native Americans for that matter, as they try to conquer more land and resources. So that's why I believe they are very independent in nature. And another reason I could think of, like in explaining this behavior, is really Christianity. And in Bible, right, like they talk about how you are encouraged. It's a bad thing that you shouldn't depend on other people for other good. You should be self-sufficient. So looking at China, right, it's just so different because the earliest record of Chinese nation can be traced back to 5,000 years ago. And these two individuals, Yan Di and Huang Di, were celebrated as ancestor for the country. So 20 dynasty and 494 empires later is what we have China right now. And 90% of those time in the past, China actually was a very safe and very peaceful nation. And from like a jurisdiction standpoint, it was administrated on 5 different levels: royal court, provinces, town, court, and villages, right? So it's a practice you carry out to today even. And grassroots chief usually were appointed for each like 5 or 10 household. And in those villages, right, those chiefs, there's a lot of those chiefs, but in villages, people all live very close to each other, and they all live next to each other for generations, and they all live in harmony. So they always have people they can rely on to take care of their family and give them a hand when they need it. So overall, China is a country that hasn't been through a lot of hardship, I would say. As a result, people rely on its comfortable village, later its own town, to kind of provide a lot of those support. And overall, geographically, it was sheltered by like a lot of high mountains, vast ocean, and make like foreign invasion pretty difficult for the most part. So that's why, like thinking about all those time that full of history, it was able to enclose itself in a very kind of like close-minded world. But because of that, they rely so much on this group thinking. They rely so much on this harmony they created as a group. And that's why it's so different when it comes to US and Chinese fundamental cultural values. And it play out so interesting in real life. I give you a couple examples. We have a lot of Chinese students study in the US, right? Myself was one of them before. And you will notice when in college or in other educational setting, like it's almost never happened that those students kind of speak their mind. And even in the courses, sometimes like participation is part of the grades, they won't speak up because at first the professor get really confused, right? Like it's almost encouraged to like speak up your mind, living your own value, be individualistic, right? But it's not the cultural value that guided a lot of students from China. So like they always try to listen and try to observe the group thinking before they feel comfortable to speak their mind. And I have to say, it took myself a couple of years to kind of overcome that kind of a tendency, just don't speak my mind, to kind of think a lot before I speak. And now I kind of just shout out my opinion, become this very outspoken Chinese person that people know of. And I would say, if we think about professional development when it comes to this cultural difference, professionals will have to put themselves out there, kind of speak their mind so they can make an impression. Because if you think about it, a lot of those work projects, half of them, I would say more than half, are just to run the operations as it is, right? To keep it normal so nothing bad will happen to it. However, there's always those challenging projects, kind of, I would say stretch project, that can expand growth, give you an opportunity to make a name for yourself and like get yourself promoted within the company. And because if you are quiet in your own personality and never speak a mind-made impression, you were never given those opportunities. And they will consider you don't really have a personality. But that's not true. It's just they are not comfortable speaking their opinion to you right now.